destination report, it feels good. T-minus 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Beyond the Launch, the podcast that explores what really happens after the deal is signed and the product goes live. Because real impact doesn't come from implementation alone. It comes from intentional, strategic customer success. Hosted by Ivan Whitaker, an experienced executive in sales, customer success, and implementations, including complex 911 and public safety implementations. This podcast goes beyond the launch to uncover what truly takes drive, adoption, measurable outcomes, and long-term success.
Welcome to Beyond the Launch from Utah Podcast Studio. In this episode, we sit down with John Fisher, Senior Partner Development Manager for CARFAX for Police. John brings a career built on trust and leadership under pressure. Before joining CARFAX, he spent more than 4 years as a Chief of Police in Bedford, Massachusetts, and more than a decade as Chief of Police and Emergency Management Director at Carlisle, where he also served as Control Chief for the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, coordinating sheriff's units across 63 cities and towns. His law enforcement career began in 1989 with the Nashua Police Department, where he served 22 years and rose from patrolman to bureau captain. Alongside 3 decades in policing, he also spent more than 30 years coaching high school basketball, a dual leadership path that shaped the coaching style approach he now brings to building and sustaining partnerships across a network of more than 6,000 law enforcement agencies nationwide. Today, John sits at the intersection of 2 worlds most people never think to connect: the consumer brand people trust when buying a used car and the investigative backbone behind modern policing. In this episode, we explore how CARFAX for Police built a no-cost data sharing model trusted by thousands of agencies, why a law enforcement professional runs a CARFAX investigative tool every 15 seconds, and what it actually takes to build partnerships that survive turnover, distrust, and slow pace of government. The real work of what happens after the launch. John, welcome to Beyond the Launch.
Thanks for having me, Ivan.
You know, John, I have watched the work of CARFAX, watched your work, and I'm just fascinated by everything that's taking place right now and the work in the public safety sector.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And am I allowed to say thanks for the tour yesterday? Your reputation in our profession is significant, and the work you've done is significant, and that you take the time to talk to me and show me how you think and the way you think was helpful. It was helpful yesterday. Plus, really good meeting you in person and seeing that, you know, our profession's in a good place. You know, as someone who's now over in the private sector and looking back and people that are providing amazing services to citizens in the public sector, it gives me a great deal of confidence to see you doing what you're doing. And people of Salt Lake and in this region should know how lucky they are to have you at the helm.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll tell you, talking to you and talking about your background and history and your knowledge, I feel equally pleased with CARFAX for making the selection to bring you on. That industry knowledge that you just can't replicate by having someone come in and just try to pick it up. So your many years of professionalism and growth is going to fare very well in CARFAX.
I hope so. It's a good company. I work with amazing people. Real fortunate to have this opportunity.
And so we always start the podcast off with a couple of icebreaker questions, and we'll do just that. Most people hear CARFAX and immediately think of buying a used car. Walk us through the moment you realized CARFAX for Police was a completely different product in a completely different world, and what surprised you about the world when you got into it?
So that's a great question. And of course, as CARFAX as a corporation, you still want people to think about having a high level of confidence in the unique data that CARFAX has for consumers. But looking at it from our profession, from a law enforcement profession, a database that involves, as many records, 38 billion records as CARFAX has, recognizing that 75% of all crimes that occur involve a vehicle, the nexus is there so that the information that CARFAX has is extremely valuable to law enforcement agencies. As you know, we have over 6,500 law enforcement agencies that use CARFAX software, that use that information that's in the database to help them in their day-to-day job. And then the piece that we're involved with Drivers Exchange 911 makes their life all that much better. So I think it's a win-win. I think that it helps that people still see CARFAX as the place to get unique data to help them make good decisions, but also that law enforcement folks and people in ECC centers see that database and the tools that CARFAX provide as valuable.
Yeah, even though I've been in public safety for a long time, I was introduced to CARFAX by a third party and didn't realize all the tools they had in the public safety sectors. I was blown away, especially with DEX 911, which we'll get into shortly here.
Mm-hmm.
My next question is, more than 75%, and you just mentioned this, of all crimes involve a vehicle. A law enforcement professional runs a CARFAX investigative tool every 15 seconds. Those are striking numbers. How did CARFAX for Police build itself into that kind of operational habit inside of agencies? And what does it tell you about what it actually takes to become an infrastructure rather than just a vendor?
So those are two really good questions and really important things. I think from the perspective, the first perspective you talked about is, why is this important and why is it valuable? Is that unique data, unique information that has to do with car crashes serves the communities that we serve, that you serve, that I used to serve. And that is ensuring that our citizens and our guests have the best service, have the best information. And if the law enforcement agencies are engaged in this behavior, combining the information that's out there with what people need and want in law enforcement investigations, if that works together, which it does. So let's just talk about real basic stuff. 75% of all crimes involve automobiles.
Right.
And here's the largest database of automobile information that's in our country right now. I think the nexus, you can see where that will be valuable. And we hope that law enforcement partners and frankly, our citizens see that as valuable.
Absolutely. And so getting into the core of our questions, and I have a lot of 911 leaders that just still haven't heard of what it is that CARFAX does. And so I think we're going to be able to flesh that out today. That CARFAX for Police is actually free for law enforcement agencies in exchange for vehicle history data. That is a fundamentally different value proposition than most technology vendors. When you're in a room with a police chief or a records manager explaining that model for the first time, what questions arise? What do they ask? And what are your honest answers?
So clearly, when we're offering something for free, so anytime something's offered for free, the obvious question is why?
Yeah.
Because, all right, so we're providing this, but why? But, keep in mind that, CARFAX is interested in unique data. So if a car's involved in a collision, CARFAX is interested in the vehicle history, so they're interested in that VIN number that it was involved in a crash. So that's why able to provide the tools for law enforcement, because it's an exchange. So there doesn't need to be a cost. And the piece that the CARFAX as a corporation gets, is that law enforcement agencies are fantastic partners because, as you know, in your job, we can't get it wrong. Law enforcement can't get it wrong. So that data is pretty well vetted. So your agency, when they put information in a records management system, that's the information and it's accurate.
Right.
So CARFAX wanting the accurate data, an obvious relationship is with law enforcement agencies. And the other piece is CARFAX as a corporation wants to make sure that that data is accurate and unique. So when we're in a room discussing it, talking to a law enforcement leader for the first time and explaining it, there are a couple hurdles to get over. See, it took me a few minutes to explain that right now to our audience. And that's still really talking at a kind of a high level because, to your point, there's follow-up questions that come afterwards.
Right. So I would guess the data that you're receiving is de-identified. Nothing that's going to identify an individual. It's strictly for the vehicles, correct?
Right. And not to sound impersonal, but, CARFAX is interested in the history of the vehicle. They're not really interested in the history of the operator and how they drive. That's not our piece. Our piece is the car itself and what it's been involved with for collisions. And frankly, outside of this piece is the entire life history. So how it's been taken care of and things like that. But that's a different piece of the business world. My understanding and what I work in is really parochial to the vehicle itself and the car crashes.
I think it'd be a good time to talk about DEX 911 and how it actually helps the public safety system. Do you want to jump into that?
Sure, I'd love to. So most operators that are involved in a collision, the first thing they think of is calling a law enforcement agency for help.
Yeah.
So those calls come into our emergency communications centers, normally on a 911. But occasionally on a business line. So they come in and the driver's exchange piece really kicks in if the law enforcement agency, either by policy or by just the circumstances that are happening, do not have someone available to go out there and help the person.
Right.
Now, no one loves that story from either the ECC side or, as a police leader, to
Right.
tell a citizen or a guest in our communities, hey, I'm sorry, we can't help.
Right.
And, that's recognized. So the DEX 911 piece is CARFAX has created an API that we can send to the operators that'll help them exchange information in the order that both law enforcement agencies and their insurance companies like to see it. And folks like an electronic solution, much
Right.
like in our world in emergency communications, they like a digital solution.
Right.
What I mean by that is they don't really want to get out a couple pads of paper. You and I we're getting along fine, but we backed into each other in the Walmart parking lot. So we have some vehicle damage that we're going to want to get fixed. And we're of course going to notify a law enforcement agency because that's what we do. And this API will help us do that. So instead of going pen and paper, the API comes through on the cell phone and enables us to use AI to, for example, take a picture of your driver's license and backfill a form. We'll use your cell phone because most people have a cell phone now. Take a couple of pictures of the damage at the location. Your cell phone will help you identify where you are. It helps our citizens and our guests by providing a very professional way to do this in a manner that's non-threatening.
Right.
Because they're taking their own driver's license picture, they're taking their own picture of their motor vehicle registration. If they're getting along with a person, the cell phones will talk to each other and provide each other with the information. You don't have to give the other operator your cell phone number or things like that. The cell phone will ask you the questions in order that really both make sense to you, make sense to your insurance company. So you'll have where it occurred, how it occurred. You'll have an opportunity to put your story in. I was backing, you were backing, whatever that particular story is. And that's kind of a unique thing because the report itself, once we exchange information, does go back to the center, does go back to the emergency communications center, where it can if the agency wants to review it. So again, we'll back up and say, well, how's that different from a serious collision? Well, this tool is not for, both airbags are deployed, people were seriously injured, there's going to be other emergency services there.
Right.
This is not for that. But we know that most collisions do not involve serious bodily injury.
Right.
Do not block an intersection such that you're going to need tow trucks and fire vehicles.
And I will talk about it from my lens as well. In a dispatch center, you have calls sitting in a queue or a waiting area, and a lot of them are low priority, low impact call types to where officers are tied up on those calls to where they could be responding to a higher priority calls.
Yeah. So obviously I talked about it from the perspective of our external customers, which, we in the emergency services world always think of first.
Yep.
What's the customer's experience? What's our victim's experience? And then of course, a close second place is how is this right for our emergency communication centers? How does this take stress off? And you did point out that obviously our people that are working in our emergency communication centers and the law enforcement officers are on the street want to maximize their use of the time.
Right.
So this helps them get the caller off the phone because they're giving them a valuable tool. It also saves the law enforcement officer from going to something and kind of supervising an information exchange where they could be going to something that's very, very important. So thank you for pointing out people who sit behind those emergency communication centers. You want those folks to feel satisfied in their job, like they're providing something, but also so that it takes some stress off. Because the longer you have somebody on that call, the longer maybe somebody that has a serious condition might wait to speak to someone.
Yep.
We don't want that. Thank you for pointing that out, the fact that this does help our ECC operators and our ECC centers.
Yes. And there's also value for officers that would still respond to these calls. They could actually hand off this link or the tool to the citizen when they arrive on scene as well.
Right. Yeah, that was a really nifty thing. And I've got to give the credit to the engineers at CARFAX that work behind the scenes to make that happen because they poll people to find out what can make this better.
Right.
So from a police officer's perspective, they can keep this running on their mobile data terminal and get to a scene and just check in with people. So that's important for jurisdictions that still do go to property damage only crashes, that this is still helpful to them.
Right.
Because the folks that are taking pictures of their driver's license with their cell phones, they're using AI to do that. They're not accessing a federal or state database. So they're not violating any of the confidences with the public or with law enforcement. But when a law enforcement officer gets there, obviously they could also take that driver's license. And if the people are struggling with it, use their databases to do this. But frankly, AI is so strong these days, and people have real IDs. And of course, our states have beautiful driver's licenses that are very easy for AI to scan. And the engineers at CARFAX have done a fantastic job of making that accurate.
I will keep down this pathway of thinking of leaders in the 911 space. We're getting a lot of technology thrown at us right now. And so some listening to the podcast might say, okay, this sounds great, but it's just another tool that our emergency dispatchers are having to remember, something that they have to do. And so your engineers have done a great job of kind of looking at the various landscapes. If you want to physically send the link from the 911 center, you can do that. But you've also worked on partnerships. Convey 911 is one of them, where there's a push button. And we've also had conversations how this could be automated in a system as well, where the emergency dispatcher doesn't have to think about it. It just goes based on the code. So I wanted to make sure we put that out there, that there's various implementation methods to make this work for the various systems. Is that correct?
Sure. There's lots of systems that we're integrated with, and there's lots of partnerships in the public safety software world that are very, very important to us. Obviously, you've had Jeff Bruns on here from Convey, but to your point, people like yourself that are very progressive leaders recognize that really just with the cell phone number of the person involved in the collision or the email, we have that line of communication open, and the center can get the person, the worker in the emergency communication center off that phone that much quicker if either AI has picked up that this should happen or the ECC worker recognizes this can happen and frankly get it off their table quicker.
So partner development in law enforcement is deeply relationship driven. With your long history in law enforcement, I know you know that very well. Agencies do not buy from companies, they buy from people they trust. What does it actually look like to earn the trust inside a police department or a sheriff's office, and how long does it genuinely take?
So that's a fantastic question. And really it depends. It depends on whether that law enforcement agency has ever used any of our tools, heard of our tools, because our world is very parochial. We talk to each other. ECC managers like yourself talk to other folks. They know what works, what doesn't. They know what's out there, but that trust piece takes some time. It definitely helps in our world that a company like CARFAX has a reputation of providing unique data that's accurate, that's blind to, who's driving the car, things like that. The information stands for itself. And law enforcement leaders and ECC directors, I see that as a strength. So this is not based on who's popular in the day or what the particular political situation in the city, town, or state is, but it's about information and about helping people. And I know that, I'm taking a stab because you brushed on the relationship piece, and we can go deeper in a relationship piece.
Right.
That's a complicated conversation.
Yeah, it is very much.
So part of this also depends on how we meet the people and where we meet them. Common to meet them at a conference where other ECC directors are and police chiefs and law enforcement leaders. Those conferences where other software is shown. Obviously, we're a little different because our stuff is free.
Right.
But that's a trusted environment.
Yep.
We can have an open discussion. But early on in the discussion, it's not the discussion. We've had success and the discussion starts, hey, we know what you need. Let me tell you what you need.
Right.
No, as you well know, that's number one, that's not how people think in our
right.
profession, right? It's us recognizing where they sit, what could help them.
Right.
And it normally takes a little bit longer. You kind of have to ask them, like, is this a problem in your community? Now, 99% of the time we get back, yes.
Yeah.
Property damage only collisions.
Right.
Are your ECC centers able to help them? Are your law enforcement officers able to spend significant amounts of time with them? Pretty quickly, most people say, no, this is really an issue.
Yes.
Because automobile collisions are still very, very frequent. So it's a high occurring incident where there's a lot of emotion involved. Obviously, for most people, that's the second largest investment they make in their life is their automobile.
Right.
So this is an important thing. But let me go back to that beginning and starting that relationship with either the ECC center or the police chief or the person that's the decision maker is building that trust. And the first thing is making sure that they understand that we hear them.
Yes.
that we are here, CARFAX is here to make it better.
There's 2 points that I want to bring out. The first point is you're right, that trust takes a while to build. We're working across the bow with leaders that they have a lot of pressure to get it right.
Yeah.
And when they get it wrong, the consequences can be dire. But at the same time, we ask for solutions in our space. And a lot of times we're hesitant to sit at the table and push things forward. So I'm encouraging those leaders to sit at the table. If there's questions, if there's concerns, let's try to get on the other side of the trust conversation and really get into the technology and provide our feedback. CARFAX has built integrations with real-time crime center platforms, CAD systems, records management systems, and other investigative tools, partnership within partnerships. Walk us through what that integration work actually looks like, who drives it, and what makes it succeed.
So those are 3 great questions. The first thing is your first question is why do it? So because it helps both sides. It can help that software company, the record management system, the CAD, because this is a good product for them to help meet the needs. So to your point, it's a system within a system. And so it can be recognized from both sides of the table. It can be recognized from the side of the table of, well, I'll keep going back to our friend Jeff at Convey.
Yep.
When we started talking with Convey, he was as interested in this as we were with them.
Right.
Which is frequently how it happens. The other way it happens is the agency itself expresses to their provider, this is something we need to do. We need help with property damage only crashes. This is the best solution out there. I'm biased, obviously, and it's pretty darn easy to explain.
Yep.
So the pressure comes from the law enforcement agency or the ECC side. And if we're really doing this right, and CARFAX quickly helps both sides meet in the middle. So we can help the software program by integrating, and then the really bright people that we have as engineers at CARFAX help on that side. And then also the ECC centers help us advocate also. Because frankly, you talked about change is difficult in our profession because as governmental agencies, providing predictability is extremely important.
Right.
So our citizens and our customers out there, providing solutions that are consistent and our message is consistent makes everybody's life better.
Right.
And then conversely, it makes the people in the emergency communications world, their life better.
Yep, I've heard a lot of great feedback from agencies on that reliability of the tool. So government agencies do not move fast. Procurement cycles are long, decision-making is layered, and the people who will use the product daily are almost never the people who approve it. How do you manage a partnership pipeline that moves at the speed of government while working inside an organization that expects growth?
So those are really important because those pressures ebb and flow. So from the ECC operator standpoint, making their life better and their desire to do that pushes one way.
Yep.
You have the leaders who need to make sure that this gets done right the first time and all the time.
Right.
Which makes change difficult. And then meeting both sides in the middle. So, we end up talking to a lot of people who are operators who just love DEX 911 or love the products or the investigative tools that CARFAX provides. And we have a lot of law enforcement leaders or ECC leaders that like the stuff. It's a little like turning an aircraft carrier, though, because there are a lot of hurdles that those leaders need to overcome. They need to make sure that this is going to be good first for their external customers,
right?
That they are going to have it right. If they're pressured from other people, like, what are you doing? Not sending police officers to every single car crash. They've got a lot of things to consider to have that story right.
Right.
Why don't ECC operators want to spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the phone with 2 different people helping them exchange information and be able to explain that reality? That's just not realistic, unfortunately, because you have people on the other side that really do need life-saving help. I mean, we spend a lot of time, you really spend a lot of time trying to think about how to make sure that people that need life-saving help get that. And if you have an ECC center operator that would love to help people, I've never met an ECC operator that isn't in it. They aren't in it to build the Taj Mahal at home.
Right.
They got into the job because they love to help people who are in a pickle. And they would probably love it if you could say, I'll have 100 operators so that we can spend 15 minutes on the phone with everybody,
right,
walking them through this. But that's not the reality.
Yep.
right? For obvious reasons. I know I picked an extreme, but that's not too far off the truth.
Right. We had a conversation yesterday about the role of 911 leaders today as opposed to some of the things we've seen in the past. And we talked a little bit about, navigating the political waters, making sure that there's, infrastructure, revenue. And I think when solutions like CARFAX hit our seat, the ability to be able to see how that's going to help in the dispatch center and to be able to create champions and pitch is very important as well. The law enforcement technology market has attracted a lot of venture-backed startups in recent years.
Oh, yeah.
Companies promising AI-powered everything.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who has spent time building trust with agencies, what do you see those companies consistently get wrong in how they approach law enforcement partnerships?
I think the first thing, when I hear pitches, and I hear pitches a lot at conferences, when I hear pitches from companies that tell law enforcement leaders or ECC leaders, we know what you need, that never really starts out, that never really gets the conversation that way.
Right.
Or start the conversation with AI's coming. You need to adopt this now.
Right.
Because we go back to people like yourself, and I'll take a second to call you out. I've visited hundreds of centers across our country. Your center's exemplary. And I know I paid you that compliment yesterday, but you're the right person to be having a podcast like this because you ask the good questions, you ask the hard questions, because you've done it right, because the law enforcement agencies can't just jump at AI and go, because everybody sees it in the news.
Right.
They'll understand that a public agency, we must have to jump at it or we're missing something. Well, no, actually, that's not true.
Right.
What's really true is that you need to grab the AI that can help your external customers, your internal customers, and make your life better. So we spent all that time yesterday with you discussing how some of the AI is going to help you, and some of the AI, frankly, you've chosen not to integrate.
Right.
And when you're running a high functioning emergency communications center like you have, you understand that no, not all of it is great.
Right.
Not all of AI is great because frankly, there's also some distrust out there still from our external customers because there's some nefarious characters out there.
Right.
Now, do I think the people that are, working, trying to get AI, especially the companies that are trying to get AI to help law enforcement are nefarious? Heck no.
Right.
Almost all of them. Actually, I've never seen one
Right.
that would say, geez, why are you doing this? Nothing you say can help. No,
Right.
It's not that. It's more nuanced.
Right.
Certain AI is right for certain centers and certain times it's not the best solution.
Yep. I can tell where vendors headed based on, like you said, the approach from the beginning when they come into the 911 center, the questions they're asking when they sit across the table. Are they asking us our issues and challenges before they even talk about a solution? Are they spending time on the floor? Are they looking at the keyboard strokes and trying to figure out what's happening in a dispatch center of our size? And we've had a fair amount that have done it the right way and have come out on the other side with solutions for us that are just unbelievable. But we have had some that have been flyby that we know that are not going to be with us for the long haul. So great take there. You represent CARFAX for police at industry events, including NENA, APCO, and public safety conferences. What do you learn at those events that you cannot learn from inside the company? And has anything you heard at the conference generally changed how you think about your product and your partnerships?
Well, there's a lot there. And the answer is yes at almost every turn. I've learned stuff at every conference I've ever been at, and I've been in a lot. And I've probably, since wearing my CARFAX hat since January, I've probably been at 15. And you called out some of our industry hallmarks.
Yeah.
APCO, NENA. I mean, basically organizations put together by people in emergency response, for people in emergency response. So this is where hard questions get asked.
Mm-hmm.
This is where really important topics in our field are discussed. So being there and seeing that and seeing people in that field interact and hearing what they say is important to them at the moment, I have found incredibly valuable because the second I was not running an ECC center,
Right.
Even that 2 weeks that it took to get over and start up at CARFAX, I was concerned I missed something.
Yep.
Because our field changes so much.
Yes.
So I have found a lot of value in listening what goes on at those.
Yep. So those conferences, they've gotten a lot better. I went to, it was the NENA conference and there was a booth. It was called The Future of 911. And even me being in the industry, to be able to see videos of what we're doing today versus what we're going to be doing in the future, that was just phenomenal, and was able to take back that information to my team. So I'm glad that you're a part of those. And the reason that question is there is because CARFAX is now infusing itself into the public safety space in every arena. So I think that that's wonderful that the company is choosing to do that.
No, it's a great point. And they do. And they've doubled down on it. They've basically given us the green light to go to as much as we need to, which is pretty nifty.
Very good. So for a founder or a product development professional at a tech company that's trying to break into law enforcement or the public safety market, what is one thing they are almost certainly underestimating about what the market requires?
From what I've noticed, what I've seen is the variety of the market, because where the community's needs, what the external customers expect, and what the agencies can provide is so varied.
Yes.
And I think a lot of very bright folks with a whole lot of technology background, it's like anything in our lives, right? We know what we're exposed to, and we know what we know. The most dangerous thing is what we don't know.
Yes.
Which is why I love to go to those conferences. So the only dangers I've seen are folks that get into this not recognizing that this is a diverse environment.
Yes.
And frankly, for their product to succeed, they've really got to be in tune to that.
Yes. And so, John, there's a lot that we didn't talk about that is coming out or CARFAX is doing. And so before we close it out, I just wanted to provide you with a space to talk to our audience about anything that we haven't talked about. What can we expect from CARFAX, any of the products? Can you lead us there?
So this is a little bit of the behind the curtain look here.
Yeah.
And we had a really important meeting last week put together by the engineers. And we do this pretty regularly. And they say, in a perfect world, no costs considered, you're out there hearing what people are going on. Describe the next 5 things that CARFAX could do to help law enforcement and ECC communities. And they put the questions out there before we met. And I'll tell you, that meeting was hot because those of us who are out there, and there's a lot of folks that work for CARFAX for police, everybody had an idea.
Right.
I had 3 biggies down. I think it'd be unfair to share them.
Yep.
Because that's CARFAX's story to tell.
Yes.
But a lot of us said the same things. In our conversation yesterday, I heard you talk about all the dreams that you have for your center. And I sat back in a little bit of amazement. And this is one of the highest performing centers in our country with exemplary everything. And you still had a dream list where you thought you could help your public better and your employees at your ECC. And that's the kind of lens that works in a high performing organization, whether it's public or private, right?
Right.
So is there a lot of stuff coming? Yes. CARFAX has given us a heads up on things coming. They have some really cool end-to-end vehicle life stuff that has just been released that if folks would like to could take a look at, but there's more coming that they've given us heads up on. And they're also very in tune to, I'll be reporting back after our meeting with you.
Yes.
My bosses have already expected me to put in writing what I learned by my visit, what came up during this conversation, because you're asking the really important questions. And the important questions always lead to what are the best solutions.
John Fisher, everyone, of CARFAX, just an extraordinary leader in the space. CARFAX is just so lucky to have you as a pioneer that's going to lead them into the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Ivan.